that two look like a brother? Them two over there look. Don't the two pass the brother? They are brother.
They are.
Oh yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Today I wanted to discuss with you a person that I admire, that I've admired since my childhood, and introduce you to a different aspect of Dave Thomas, the founder of the Wendy's franchise. I believe that one of the goals of every human being should be to work to be in a position to be able to give back to the people or the institution from which they've come. Dave Thomas's life story and accomplishments are worthy of our admiration, but especially for those who benefited from the modification and the addendums to the modern day adoption that he made contributions to. Because of my blended ethnicities that exist within my gene pool, I've often been mistaken for an adopted child. And especially with the fact that I was born in the 60s, people just assumed I was Amerasian. But that always sparked my interest in the concept and the procedure and process of adoption. And I remember distinctly seeing Dave Thomas give commercials when I was a child and admitting that he was an adopted person. And that was rare back then, to have someone openly admit that they had been adopted. I'd like to bring to your attention and gain your understanding that Dave Thomas was more than a millionaire. He was an adopted person who became an adoption advocate, and he instituted improvements in the adoption process for all people. We should gain and appreciate Dave Thomas' life as an adopted child, and we should admire the fact that he was adopted, that his adoption did not deter his ability to realize his dreams and to succeed, and the fact that he gave back to the institution of adoption. Let's first take a look at Dave Thomas's journey through adoption. His adoption was a very normal adoption. However, in his childhood, he experienced great tragedies. According to Dave Thomas, a timeline of short life, he was born July 2nd, 1932 in Atlantic City, New Jersey, where he was surrendered for adoption at 6 weeks of age. He was adopted by Rex and Oliva Thomas from Kalamazoo, Michigan, and they named him Rex David Thomas. Sadly, though, his adoptive mother passed away when he was only 5 years old, and his father then later remarried, and subsequently 2 of those stepmothers died by the time he was 10. So he didn't have a sweet life. Next, I want to take a look at his success. The Thomas family moved around several times and often. When Dave was only 15 years old, the family decided to leave Fort Wayne, where they had been the longest, but Dave refused to go with his family. Instead, he dropped out of high school and gained a full-time position in the restaurant that he worked while he was in high school. When Dave returned some years later to Fort Wayne from the Korean War, he was reacquainted with his former boss in that same restaurant and was fortunate enough through him to meet Colonel Sanders of the Kentucky Fried Chicken chain. He went on to manage and then own 8 of the KFC franchises, and in 1968 he sold those franchises for $1.5 million. Backtracking, in 1956 he married his wife Lorraine, and together they had 5 children. The youngest was Melinda Lou, who they called Wendy, and she was the one who his Wendy's hamburger restaurant was so named. He left a footprint in the process and benefits of adoption. According to the biography of Dave Thomas, he was named the national spokesman on adoption issues by President George Bush. He promoted the creation of an employee benefit program for adoptive parents. At that time, or previous to that time, adoptive parents weren't allowed to have time off from work like natural birth parents were. They weren't privy to maternity leave or paternity leave as natural parents were. He founded the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption. This organization gives or finds grant monies to help sway the cost of private adoption, so that people who aren't wealthy and aren't rich would be able to privately adopt. And Dave Thomas also heavily promoted the adoption of children housed in the foster care system. In conclusion, I just wanted to draw your attention tonight to the fact that despite his wealth and his fame, he was most loved for and known as a common man. However, Dave Thomas was anything but common. He was a product of adoption. And although his childhood had trauma, as many people's childhood does, he never once used his adoption as an excuse for his hard times. He persevered, he overcame, and most importantly, he gave back. Thank you.